Namaskar and good afternoon. Sadhna Sharma ji, principal and patron of this Litfest, and all the people gathered here, and my co-panelist, Ms. B. Rowlett. I'm really very sorry that I could not make it for this event today due to some unforeseen official engagement. And so I have decided that I will record my intervention and share it with you. I hope you do enjoy it, and I really, really missed being at the Litfest today. So, the topic for today's panel that we were given was feminism in fiction and non-fiction. And when I read it and reread it and tried to think about it, I realized that each and every word in that topic, feminism, fiction, non-fiction, is something. On each word there can be a separate session, because there is really a lot of debate and no real concise definition of feminism, of what is fiction, what is non-fiction. So then I thought about it and I decided that I will speak about the genre I write and I enjoy the most, which is science fiction. So, what is feminism? Simply put, it is a belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. Finally, in my view, it is an idea that helps women have agency to exercise choice. Choices about ourselves, our lives, and our bodies. And of course, choices about our aspirations. All of us sitting here today, gathered here, whether online or physically, we all know that really what it is that denies women the agency to make choices for themselves. It is a social structure that is based on biology, that is designed by men, for men, and about men. And what's literature? Literature is always a reflection and dissection of the times that we are living in, or have lived in the past, or will live in the future. And fiction is the class of literature that comprises works of imaginative narration, especially prose. And what's a feminist novel? A feminist novel would be one where the concerns of women and womanhood are the main threads of the narrative, and it deals primarily with the lives of its women characters. Not all novels that are about women are feminist novels. What comes to my mind are, like in the old times when we were young, the Mills and Boon novels. Nobody can say that they are feminist novels. And in current times, look at 50 Shades of Grey. It's about women, but it really doesn't come, in my view, in the category of a feminist novel. An illuminating definition of the feminist novel has been given by American writer Roxana Gay. I quote, "A feminist novel, then, is one that not only deals explicitly with the stories and thereby the lives of women, it is also a novel that illuminates some aspect of the female condition and, or, offers some kind of imperative for change and, or, makes a bold or unapologetic political statement in the best interests of women," unquote. Whatever be the form or substance of a novel, it can be horror, romance, fiction, the story is the queen of any novel. And any ideas, even if it is feminism, have to emanate from that queen, from that story in the book. And writing a novel gives expression, it provides an outlet, and can provide a platform for activism and exploration. And for women who write, all these are important milestones in the creative process. But for women writers, all these milestones can only be achieved if actually they can write in their own name. I'm just harking back a little just to give a perspective about what women writers have been going through and still are going through. I'm sure we all know about female writers who have originally in the beginning written under male names or pseudonyms. And I think the most famous in these are the Bronte sisters, and even Harper Lee, who's actually a woman who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. And she changed her name to this androgynous Harper so that people do not identify that story with a female writer. But it's not about just people in the past. Even J.K. Rowling, you didn't use her name Joanne Rowling for her Harry Potter series because her publisher advised her that it would be better to use initials so that she doesn't lose out on young male readers. Or look at Alice Sheldon. She wrote from 1967 till her death under the name James Triptree Jr. And actually, the James Triptree Jr. Award for science fiction or fantasy explorations of gender is actually named after her. So, women writers have a long way, I mean, they are on a journey of their own empowerment story. Coming to science fiction, even Mary Shelley, when she first published Frankenstein in 1818, she published it anonymously, and it was only published in her name in the Paris edition in 1821. Frankenstein is often said to be the original science fiction. Science fiction has been traditionally a male-dominated area. It's been written by men for men. It's been so that traditional science fiction of wars between aliens and machines. So that has been primarily, and even today, science fiction is considered a male domain. Although I must say that around the world and even in India, a lot of females and women are writing science fiction today. So what's science fiction and what's special about it? Like all literature, science fiction is ultimately a philosophical delving into the realities and questions that face a society in contemporary times. Science fiction also provides an author with a blank canvas to imagine. You can imagine and create any future, any world, any reality, and that can either give us hope or make us think. The only, I would say, baseline is that it should have a scientific kind of base. It should be explainable by some science, because otherwise it comes into the realm of fantasy. When we look at science fiction written by women, it's very well described by Jenny Wallmark, a writer and university professor who had a gender lens. And she said, and I quote, when she talks about science fiction written by women, she says, it is, I quote, at the cutting edge of culture, unquote. Most feminist science fiction challenges the dominant culture of its time. Through science fiction, women have been exploring the frontiers of science, women's issues, roles and place in society, and more often than not, the biological freedom that it can offer them, that imagination can offer them. They explore utopias or dystopias where the female liberation or bondage forms the main idea. When we look at science fiction, which is of a liberating kind, I think one of the best examples is the short story written by Begum Ruqayya in 1905 in Bengali titled Sultana's Dream. In this story, the gender roles are reversed in Ladyland, with men inside the Mardana and women running the world. Her imaginary place, Ladyland, is not isolated. It is linked to the world. The queen of Ladyland fights wars with other kingdoms, trades, and encourages scientific discoveries in her realm. On the dystopian side, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale of 1985 is a good example. In this story, in the future, the central character and narrator is one of the handmaidens, women who are forcibly assigned to produce children for the commanders. The loss of female agency and individuality, suppression of women's reproductive rights, and the various means by which women resist and try to gain individuality and independence form the base of this story. Between these two themes is the famous 1969 book of Ursula Le Guin, I hope I pronounce it correct, The Left Hand of Darkness. Written at the start of the revolutionary women's movement, it was one of the earliest pieces of the feminist science fiction. It is about a man from Earth who travels to the planet Gethin, where the people have no fixed gender, and how he struggles to relate. A major theme of the novel is the effect of sex and gender on culture and society. Science fiction allows women writers to imagine social constructs that are not mired in misogyny and patriarchy and reimagine their bodies and biological bondage in different ways. Or the opposite in dystopia. So either it can be an imagination of liberation, or it could be a reinforcement of and a more dystopic view of what actually is the reality even today. Coming to what I write, when I began to write my novel Ascendance, I wanted to write a story of when technology kind of takes away the reproductive link between men and women, and men can have babies through cloning and women can have babies through cloning. What would their relationship be like? That was the germ of the idea when I started working on Ascendance. And in my story, actually, in thousands of years in the future, on a planet in far away from Earth, men and women become the competing species. They live separated by a fence, and the book is about the end game battle between men and women. While I was writing and working on the story, the whole issue of immortality, every culture has this great value for immortality across the globe. So I also threaded in the idea of what if we actually became near immortal and humans actually could nearly live forever, where dying is a possibility, but it normally does not happen. So then how does that play out in a society where the men and women are the competing species? So even in my book, if unwittingly I have dealt with the biological aspect of the gender relationships between men and women and threaded in other social constructs as a parallel to try and build that story. And even in my latest book, which is at the manuscript stage, it's called Continuum, I have tried to explore the how ideas of love, ambition, and freedom for women have changed and yet not changed across the continuum of time and distance. So the struggle of women, the struggle of the women's movement, in a sense, not movement, but what we are all struggling for ultimately, which I said in the beginning, of equality of choice and agency. I mean, how that has shaped up, I have tried to put it in a sci-fi, what should I say, model or jacket. As a genre, science fiction gives women writers and their audience the ability to imagine unshackled and different lives. And when you imagine ideas that resonate and have appeal, there might be a nudge to move towards them. I must admit that I tried to look at some research about how sci-fi writing kind of impacts younger girls or women or people at large, but I really couldn't find much except a study done in 2018 by the Women Media Center in the US of teenage girls. It found that young girls are inspired and motivated by sci-fi / superheroes. We have these women superheroes now coming out of the Marvel world. The Wonder Woman is one of the oldest now. I think they're doing some others also. 9 in 10 girls called sci-fi positive role models. 58% of the girls agreed that women sci-fi / superheroes, and I quote, make them feel like they can achieve anything they put their mind to, unquote. So there is some element of motivation that comes in from sci-fi stories also. That brings me to the main issue that I started in the beginning with feminism being a thought and a belief about equality. Basically, it is about closing the gender gap. And let me tell you that the road to bridging the gender gap on our planet is long and slow. According to the World Economic Forum, it will take another 136 years for the gender gap to close. In this long and slow march, I think stories and writing provide both an outlet and a source of inspiration for young girls and women especially. So the message really of my whole idea on this is that we all who write should just continue to write. Thank you so much. Namaskar.